Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hive Summit. We have a power-packed day for you. First, let's get started with some updates. Remember to continue to share out your learning with the hashtags Hive Summit and Hive Sketch. If you're doing some of those cool, crazy cool sketch notes, we'd love to see those. Additionally, if you could please consider donating to the Hive Summit's Kiva Fund. It helps people around the globe. I truly believe that together we can change the world. So hop on over to the site and donate. With so many busy bees in the hive, we are sure to make a better world. Keep watching the social media for any other updates and activities throughout the summit. And that's all the updates we have, so let's get started. Once again, welcome to the Hive Summit. Today's guest has been a history teacher. He has won Utah's Council for Social Studies Teacher of the Year and the National Council for Social Studies Best of the West Award. This man transforms learning activities into thought-provoking, challenging, and yet engaging activities through his mission to bring play back into our schools. This was made apparent by the release of his book, Play Like a Pirate, a book filled with ideas that we can all just use straight away in our classrooms. And from quick assessments to playful projects, you won't be at a loss on how to bring play into the classroom. It is my honor, my pleasure to share in this conversation with fellow DBC author with a message so close to my heart, Quinn Rollins. Welcome to the Hive Summit.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me.
Oh, I was super jazzed when you agreed to be on the summit. It is, just like I said, truly a pleasure. I think both of us have a similar message that just resonates, and I'm super excited to have you here on the Hive.
Thanks. Yeah, I love sharing your book and ideas and using your ideas. So yeah,
So I
excited.
guess starting with that, right? Like this idea, like I said in the intro, we each have sort of a shared passion to sort of bring back, you use the word play, I'm using the word sort of joy into our classroom, into our experiences. Let's start there. Let's start at passion. I think that's the best place to begin.
Yeah, so when Dave Burgess wrote his book Teach Like a Pirate, pirate was an acronym, and the P in pirate is for passion. And he talks about it as passion for what you teach, professional passion, and personal passion. And passion for what you teach is like, I'm a history teacher. I hope I like at least some parts of history. And when I get to those parts of history that I super love, like World War I or the Great Depression, I'm going to be more excited about it. I should share that passion with my students. Um, Professional passion is like what we're doing with Hive Summit, what we do when we go to conferences, what we do with professional development. If you are a teacher, you want to be the best possible teacher you can be. So some of these conferences you go to, and you just hope to get one thing out of it that is really going to impact your classroom. Because we've all been to those conferences where we don't get something out of it. So
Sure.
professional passion, I think, is I want to be a great teacher and be proud of being a teacher. And personal passion is the thing that I think a lot of us leave out of the classroom. And to me, that is whatever makes me Quinn outside of the classroom. And that is like it might be hiking, it might be running, it might be cooking or quilting, bringing whatever that is into the classroom. Uh, it makes a difference. It makes you happier. It makes your students more engaged. And for me, that personal passion that I try to bring in is about toys and comics and games and fun. And it's really paid off bringing some of me into the classroom and sharing that with my students.
I couldn't agree more. For me, actually, reading Dave's book, Teach Like a Pirate, definitely sort of unlocked that message for me as well. I think I always sort of went to school trying to be very professional and like keep everything, just be all teachery all the
Right.
time. And Dave's book just kind of really like inspired me to be truly me and share with my students those aspects like you were saying, like the hobbies, the things you enjoy, the things you like. And from there, I just saw a greater relationship built with my students. And greater joy for me in terms of teaching the content because I'm making some connections to those things. And that spark that I had definitely translated to sort of like a spark in the students. There was a greater excitement to be in the classroom. So I think starting with passion, there's a reason we should start with passion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with something I've heard about Dave's book and your book and my book is that it gives teachers permission to teach the way they've wanted to teach, but they have felt sort of pushed into that box. And I think the emphasis on assessment, which I believe in and I agree with, I actually really love assessment. Some teachers see that as taking away the art of teaching and being told you all have to do this exactly the same way. And I don't think that's the message. The message is finding out what your students are learning. And there are a lot of different ways to do that.
Which I am excited to get into some of the like ways that you use this sort of playful idea into the classroom. But that permission, everyone that's like hearing this, if you happen to pick up Quinn's book or Dave's book or my book or any of, there's so many great educational books out there from all sorts of publishers, but definitely hear that mission that you need to be you, right? I think that's if you could take something away, that's one I think we would all like to share with you guys is be you, be comfortable being you, and bring that passion in. Don't be afraid of that. And I think, like I said, it's just going to amp
Yeah,
up the classroom, amp up those relationships.
I think every teacher I've ever met really has something to offer to kids beyond their content, and that's what they need to bring. And I think some of us have had the message from different administrators. No, that isn't what we want. That isn't what we hired you for. But really, it is, and it's what the kids want to see. You know.
So true. So I just laugh because I'm very excited to get into actually Quinn's passion though. No, so let's share it. If you were to fill in that blank, what's the passion that you really wanted to sort of bring into the classroom? I'm sure the list could go on, but the main one for you that you did, apply to your classroom would be drumroll.
Toys.
Boom.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I'm a big fan of toys. I'm in my 40s, and I should have stopped caring about toys probably 30 something years ago.
I disagree.
But I love them. I think that it's a great medium to get kids on board with something, but also to get adults on board with something. If you're an adult, if you're a teacher of teachers, use toys. If you're a teacher of children, use toys. And we think about it like Play-Doh, for example, is something that so many elementary classroom teachers use, but I teach juniors. I have 11th graders, and I use Play-Doh with them, and they love it. I don't use it every day. But when I do use it, it is for a purpose, and it ends up being a lesson that they remember.
So one, I love this message, right? That I like bring back sort of these toys because it elicits something in all of us. So we don't have to end it when whatever, like you said, after like pre-primary and stuff, like Play-Doh doesn't get broken out all that often.
Right.
And I love it because it connects to kind of who we are. It's tactile, it's creative, endless possibilities. You're given kind of just that lump of Play-Doh, like which is nothing in its current form, and you got to sort of like turn it into something. I love that creation that comes with the Play-Doh. So let's talk about some examples you have of using Play-Doh in the classroom. Like I'm a junior in your class. How might we bust it out?
So I think that there is a difference between Play-Doh and then like modeling clay or salt clay that I know some teachers use, where Play-Doh, the beauty of it is how pliable and how quick and how easy it is to use. And so whenever I use it multiple times. I have like 2-minute sculpting prompts, and we'll do maybe 4 of those and sort of talk about them within a 20-minute period. It's not going to be my whole class that day, It's going to be a way to assess something we've already been talking about. So, for example, if we're talking about immigration, I would have like 6 different prompts for them to choose from. They're at a table, they roll a die, and if they roll a 1, everybody at that table needs to sculpt a new Statue of Liberty. If they roll a 2, they have to sculpt some sort of family tradition they have that came from outside the United States. But if they roll a 6, it might be just like, what's the craziest hairstyle they can sculpt out of Play-Doh. And so you have these non-content specific prompts mixed in with the content specific prompts. As a teacher, the way I'm assessing is going through and circulating through the tables that are sculpting a content-based one. So looking at those new statues of liberty, talking to the kids about what they've sculpted. Meanwhile, the kids that are sculpting the craziest hairstyle, I don't have to pay as much attention to those tables. I'm really
genius. You're freeing yourself up time to like give greater time to the ones that are doing the content. But I would imagine with the randomness of the die, and you said you give multiple prompts, you're going to eventually hit every table.
Everybody is eventually going to sculpt something related to the content, and those are the tables I'm going to pay most attention to. And the other kids feel like they're getting away with something, and that illusion of, oh, kids, you got one over on me, darn you, like that. Yep. That's one of the joys of teaching is tricking kids into something, and so.
That's a fun example. So, quick question, because I know people are going to be out there and want some bit of advice. So, one, you said these are like 2-minute prompts, like so a 2-minute construction or creativity there. Second, do you have them publicly sort of share out, or are you just sort of walking by the table and say, Jimmy, like, what have you created here? And they insert content in their response back to you.
So the biggest part of it ends up being the table talk that they are having, because you're going to have a kid who can only sculpt a snake, so they're rolling out their snake of Play-Doh, and then you're like, how is that a Statue of Liberty? And they will make some sort of cognitive connection that explains how this really represents a new Statue of Liberty. And it goes back to that Benjamin Franklin cartoon that has the snake chopped into pieces, and they will make something up, trying to make their weird sculpture fit your sculpting prompt. But that cognitive exercise, that's really what I'm looking for. And if I am at a table and Billy sculpted something fantastic, then yeah, I'm going to have him share that with everybody. But keeping in mind that the other tables on the next roll might also be sculpting that same thing, I don't want them to get the idea of, oh, we all need to sculpt a snake now.
Sure.
So I do limit the amount that I share out. I really want to hear their table talk that they're having with each other. That's really where a lot of this happens.
All right, Quinn, sort of a follow-up question to that. You were saying that the table is discussing kind of the same prompt because they all rolled one die and are answering the same prompt. They're all like building statues, well, different symbols for the Statue of Liberty. And you're listening to that discussion, like what would be a good symbol for sort of America and freedom and welcoming of other nations.
Right. And so the table talk that's happening, really to me, that's where the assessment is happening, is in that discussion. If you gave all the tables a writing prompt and then had them roll a die and answer it that way, they would just all write down something and then sit there quietly. But if they're sculpting something, then that's something visual and something tactile. And they can also be talking at the same time that they're doing that. It's harder to talk and write at the same time. I've seen with Play-Doh, it's like that's really where it happens. So this shouldn't be a silent activity. It's they're going to talk about it, and some of that talking is making fun of their own sculpting skills, and some of it's going to be off topic. But it's also going to be something that they're eventually going to talk about how this represents what that is. And when you're doing this, make sure you throw in some abstract ideas too. Okay, not just sculpting a Statue of Liberty, but sculpting the idea of of freedom. What does that look like? It's an abstract concept. How would you sculpt that?
This is awesome. I'm already super excited to bust out the Play-Doh with my students. I'm sure that you have other ideas for us. So if we can kind of move on to another example you want to share with us.
Sure. So one that is one of the first times I sort of ventured out into using toys is having students design action figures. And when I was in college, I worked with a company called Palisades Toys. They made toys based on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Muppets and the X-Files. And one of the things I did with them was figure out which accessories should come with which character should come in the same wave of the action figure line that's on store shelves at the same time. And so I took those ideas. I took like the classic G.I. Joe card design, and I said, all right, let's have kids turn this into a biography of a historical character. And so really where this came from is I had students who I would assign a 2-page biography about their hero in history, and they would do sort of a half-baked job on it. They didn't care about it. I would read 200 of them. By the end of it, I didn't care about it. I gave it back to them, and they would recycle it, right?
Yep.
And so I said, okay, I need to do this differently. So sort of started giving them this template, and the templates are all on my website, and they're free, and they're there for anybody to use. And they really stepped up. I went from having about 75% of students turn in this assignment to pretty much 100%. And so it's an action figure template. They need to come up with what the action figure would look like, accessories that the action figure would have, short biography about the size of an index card on the back, and other people, other characters who you would see in that same action figure line. And
I did this with my students,
yeah,
and I do it in my gamified class. I do it as like a side quest they can do in
hmm
one of my units, and students love it. And my favorite part of the action figure sort of template is what you just sort of mentioned, the like who else would be in the line. So at the front of the action figure box, if you will, it sort of has you sort of name the title, like what is it? Is it just generic like Romans, or is
right,
it like Roman politicians, Roman philosophers, whatever? Then on the back side, which would be the back of the box, at the bottom you had on the template sort of 4 or 5 boxes where it's kind of like who else would be in the line. So again, the thinking that has to go on, like who else would fit into the Roman philosophers or the Roman leaders. And I also love just above that, you have what would be its play set, right? And I
right.
always have to explain to students. I have 6th graders, excuse me, and they're always like, "Well, what does he mean by that? Or what does this mean?" And I said, like if you had Batman, what would be the like $200 like crazy thing that they would want you to buy? Like they'd want you to buy like maybe like the whole like Bat Cave, right? Like that would be the cool play set. So what would be the Roman philosophers sort of play set that you could sort of geek out over if that was your thing?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to see the direction the kids take, because you'll have multiple kids using Abraham Lincoln, and one of them will use the log cabin that he grew up with. Somebody else would use the White House. Somebody else would use Ford's Theater. And they're all getting at different parts of who Abraham Lincoln was. And we all know exactly which kid would use Ford's Theater. I mean,
We do.
we
We
all
do.
have that kid, right?
We do.
Um, the thing I like best about using the action figures is choosing a topic where you have a lot of people all kind of doing the same thing. So a theme like civil rights instead of a single event like the Battle of Gettysburg, where you have every kid knows Rosa Parks, every kid knows Martin Luther King, but there are hundreds of other activists who you could make a civil rights action figure out of. And it's African Americans, but also Latinos and LGBT rights. There are so many different civil rights activists. You get all these kids doing it, you put them up on the wall of your classroom, and suddenly they realize that civil rights isn't a single event. It's not just the I have a dream speech, but it is
Yep.
many different people doing many different things, all with the same goal of equality. And I love having students make that connection and see that, or doing it with the age of reform, or doing it with. I have a lot of English teacher friends who have used it on just protagonists of their books. So instead of doing a traditional book report, who's the protagonist for that book? And even if they all read the same book, like To Kill a Mockingbird, not everybody's going to choose Atticus Finch. Not everybody is going to choose Scout. Somebody's going to choose Boo Radley. I saw a
Yep.
student who chose Tim Johnson, who is the dog that Atticus puts down uh, in the street. That's what that kid identified with. That's what they did. But they did that same activity, that same assignment, and got something out of it, where that kid may not have done the little 2-page report, you know? So they take pride in it. They want to take that home. They want to share it with friends and family. They look at what their friends did, which isn't something you have with most traditional assessments. So I've really enjoyed seeing kids latch onto that.
Now, like another sort of same genre, same idea, but kind
Mhm.
of a little twist. I know you have several of these. So we just sort of talked about action figures and kind of that template that
Sure.
we're going to link down below to that. So if you guys
Mhm.
just check out sort of the speaker notes page down below, you'll be able to get links to all of these things. But uh, as somebody who has followed your work and is happy to both promote it and use it, you also have a template for that's similar, which is this like Lego set, and also like a superhero template to like kind of list two others. Can you
Yeah.
walk us through those kind of quickly because they're similar, but
Sure.
hit on kind of a different thing?
So with superheroes, instead of turning like Benjamin Franklin into a spandex clad superhero, which I don't want to see, instead of doing that, it's a you take an idea, core concepts in your curriculum. So things like justice, truth, equal opportunity, diversity, and uh, and have students take that abstract idea and turn that into a superhero. And if that means that a kid doesn't understand or doesn't make a solid connection with each of those 7 core ideas, they still made it with diversity. And they're going to be able to talk about diversity when we're talking about different things in our curriculum throughout the school year. They're going to be able to share that idea. Um, if I were a music teacher, instead of having them turn an instrument into a superhero, I would have them maybe choose the notation like allegro or forte or something like that that they're going to be able to come back to throughout the school year. If I were a science teacher, it wouldn't be a scientist, but it would be a step of the scientific method, something you want really drummed into their heads all the time that we usually do by rote, um, but have them find a way to express that as a superhero. And I think kids dig that. We're in an age of superheroes right now. They know who Ant-Man is. I didn't know who Ant-Man was when I was a teenager, and I'm a nerd.
I
So
love it.
they know these, and they have a context and a literacy that they can use approaching these.
I love it. So with the action figure or not the action figure, with the superhero, what we're like really talking about is broad concepts
Hmm.
and the superhero themselves is like just a representation of that.
Yeah,
So like you
and I
said,
share.
you're not like creating Ant-Man, and like you said, you're not taking Ben Franklin and making him. You're taking this concept.
No, I share some examples with them, like how Wonder Woman can represent truth because her lasso compels people to tell the truth. Or Batman represents justice, not revenge, because he uh, doesn't want what happened to his parents to happen to anybody else, you know? And so they get the idea that a superhero isn't just the character and their powers, but they can represent something. And they get that more than they ever have. With the Lego template you mentioned, before I had a set of Lego to use in the classroom, I had this template that had them designing different phases of a Lego lineup. So if you go to a Lego store and you're looking for fireman, firefighter Lego sets, they're gonna have like a $10 version and a 20 and a 30 and then like the $100 version. And
That's
so
right.
giving students some templates and saying, okay, your theme is westward expansion. What would the $10 Lego set be? The 20, the 30, the $100 Lego set. And so they might have like the Pony Express, a small event, is the smallest one. The Gold Rush might be the larger one, and then the biggest one might be the Oregon Trail. Um, and they also might choose different perspectives, or you might tell them, hey, you need to include a Native American perspective in this. One of these sets has to represent that somehow. And has spots for minifigures down at the bottom so they can design some characters that would go in it. And kids have enjoyed doing that. So not just actually building with Lego, but the design process. And I think design thinking and even STEM thinking is a big part of all of these strategies. And is something that kids don't always get to do. They don't always get to flex that creative muscle, especially honestly in history classes. I think some of our history classes are the absolute best experience for kids, and some are the worst. And when you talk to people who reflect on their high school and middle school history classes, you get both ends of that
Uh,
spectrum.
that's so
So
true.
usually the best because we're the best. But
And just a reminder for everybody that Quinn and I are both history teachers.
that's right. Yeah.
That hits home pretty hard. Something that you sort of, I will totally admit, opened my eyes to. And when we talk about connecting to our passions, I was so excited when you kind of gave me that permission to use Lego in the classroom, like the actual, like we just talked about a Lego template and kind of
Yeah.
drawing creative. It's awesome. I love it. You should check that out in the notes. But this is like, I just think super genius. Share with us like using Legos in the classroom. I know you did a blog post last year, I believe, might have been 2 years ago, about an activity you start the year with. Oh, it had to be last year. You start the year with. Maybe that would be a really good story to share because a lot of our people in the Hive Summit are about to start their school year.
Yeah. So Lego. Uh, there's so many great things about Lego. I mean, I could talk. I have talked for hours about this, but really at its most basic, it's a tool that every kid knows how to use, and it's a tool that not that everybody knows how to use it, but sometimes people have been told how to use it, and it's not necessarily here is a bunch of pieces you can use to make a race car. Make a race car. I like to use it. Everybody take 20 pieces. You're not going to know what these 20 pieces are for until I tell you. So they take 20 pieces, and then after they get those 20 pieces, then they need to build something with it. And so when I start the school year, I have them take a handful of pieces, and they need to build something that represents themselves, and they're going to share that with a neighbor. They need to build something that represents something in history that they should remember from eighth grade 3 years ago, but they might not. And so it might be something big like the Civil War. How do you take those 20 pieces and build the Civil War? Or take those 20 pieces and build something we haven't talked about yet? What's their understanding of the civil rights movement? And as they build and as they share, I think with Lego, there's a lot more thinking going on than is evident to me as the adult until they explain it to me. Um, but for most people, as they're building with Lego, they think about every single piece they're putting onto something with intention. And if you have a child that builds with Lego or builds virtually, like with Minecraft, and you happen to walk in and say, "Hey, what are you building?" Like 7 hours later, you'll still be there listening to their explanation. And that's awesome. Because there is a lot of thinking that goes into that building process. And so I love letting kids, and when I say kids, like I teach 16 and 17-year-olds, and they absolutely love doing it.
Yeah, in my experience, the Legos, like you said, can elicit such creative responses, and to be able to play with content, you really have to know the content and to make those connections, and I love it. So getting kids a bucket of Legos and having them go at it, and a lot of times, just like you were saying about some of those templates, sometimes pushing them to try to think of an abstract concept too, not just straight up like build the race car, right? Or build this from our reading last night, which are also neat to see them try to do that. But it's also really cool though when you have this like abstract thought that like can't really be constructed, but they always come through. They always figure out a way to do it, and it's amazing, and I love it. And the joy like that gets produced by that. Like there's something about that tactile, that construction. They're excited to share. They're excited to talk about it. At least my kids, which is middle school, that can be brutal. They are like willing to compliment each other. They're like, "That's really cool what you did." They're willing to sort of look each other in the eye and check out each other's designs, which is amazing. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and with each of these, uh, like I don't use Lego every month or anything. It's usually once a quarter because any of these ideas, if you do it all the time, it would get stale.
Hmm.
Um, but also after I've introduced these ideas, then I will allow them to do it as an alternative kind of assessment for some of my assignments. Sort of like the way you use side quests.
Hmm.
If if you'd rather express this with a Lego build and a paragraph explaining it to me, then you can do it that way. And some kids choose to do that. Others choose a more traditional assessment, but the ones who get it and love it, like they blow my mind all the time. And it's usually when I've given them an abstract idea, not like build the Berlin Wall, but build the idea of containment of communism, and
Sure.
uh, and they come up with things that really surprise me. That oh, you understood that better than I thought you did,
Yeah.
and you expressed it with Lego, so you get all my points. Whatever.
It's so fun to see the kids, like I said, dive into these. I love all the concepts you've sort of shared from the Play-Doh, Lego superhero action figure. Again, check out the notes down below for these links. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about. I know you have another passion that you really want to dive into, and I think it's important to sort of shed light on this topic too. Is using graphic novels in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah. In addition to all the other ways I'm a geek, graphic novels and comics are another way. Um, what I love most about them right now is we are in this golden age of publishing nonfiction graphic novels really aimed at young readers, and that is from elementary grades all the way through high school. We haven't seen publishing like this ever before. Uh, last year, um, with my high school students, we read three different graphic novels. One was about immigration, one was about World War one is about civil rights. And I just got approval from my principal, and they purchased um, three different sets of Native American themed graphic novels that are all either written by Native American authors or illustrated by Native artists.
That's awesome.
And so their graphic novels today, there are more of them. They are uh, more nonfiction topics, and that's not just history, but it's also science and biography. There's more and better literature. There are a lot of adaptations that are great, and there's more diversity from the authors that are writing them and the subjects. And so you're getting a lot more Native voices, Latino voices, African American, LGBT voices that are telling their own stories, and it's so important for our students to see it. And so, in addition to the ones that I use as assigned readings, I also have, about 100 different graphic novels just on my bookshelves that kids can take and read, and they do. Like when we say,
They
"Oh,
do.
and they do, and they bring them back, which is more impressive. But so often we label kids as reluctant readers, when really they would just rather read something else, and
Some
showing
important
them some of
distinctions.
showing them some of that something else and the great things that are out there uh, is really valuable. I have a blog post I wrote for Edutopia that is sort of the best nonfiction graphic novels for middle school. And I think that's a great jumping off point. But I have like recommended reading lists on my website as well. Just that there's so much good out there. And I think that if you are an adult who hasn't ever read a graphic novel, it can be hard to recommend them to somebody else. And so if you went through and checked out some of those books and were able to recognize the value in them, your students already do. Your students get it.
Hmm.
It's us as teachers or librarians or administrators that sometimes need to ease out of our comfort zone and maybe sample a few of them because they're incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn, you got me kind of on this with The Arrival, which was an interesting book, and kind of mind blowing how much you get out of that book with just sort of the visuals. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, the Arrival is one of my favorite. It's the one that I use for immigration, and it's a completely wordless book, and the goal is to tell a universal immigration story. And it's written by an Australian who is the son of Korean immigrants to Australia, and he tells this beautiful story with bizarre imagery. And what I love about it is if you have students who don't speak English or read English very well, and students who are fluent readers, you're all in the same boat. Everybody is as confused as everybody else. It's a very disorienting approach to immigration, which I haven't ever gone through myself, but you see the struggles that this protagonist goes through as he copes with the language and getting a first job and finding a place to live and all the other struggles that a first generation immigrant usually goes through, and doing it all without words. And the discussions that kids have about that book, they love it. They were still talking about it in May when school ended up. They were still using that as examples when we were talking or writing about different events.
Well, that book is so much of an experience itself, right? It's I don't know, it's just different than most books I've ever read, and even that I don't even know if that term is the right term to use because that book's an experience. So that's
It, it is. It's bizarre and it's beautiful, but I haven't met many people that have touched that book that the book hasn't touched them.
yeah.
So
So I mean, we have covered the gamut here. You have dropped a million things that these people can use straight away in their class. Do you have any advice to help these people sort of get out of the hive and use this stuff right away?
well, the way I approach my book, the way I approach sharing ideas, the way I approach really everything with teachers is to be as practical as possible. Like all of the ideas I think that I've shared are things that you could try tomorrow with students. There isn't anything where you have to buy into a particular program. There isn't anything that you need to um, do much to get up to speed yourself before you try it. It's things that kids understand and kids will get on board with, and they're going to love. So the advice is just try it. It's all practical things that you can do with your kids, and it's all things that I don't think force a teacher out of their comfort zone to try, and the payoff is immediate.
I couldn't agree more. Get these things in your classrooms, get them in the students' hands. Check out those resources down below. I think you'll see a couple of these templates and you'll just want to print them off right away and use them. Maybe start there too, because you don't have to have the Legos or the Play-Doh. Just this template and you'd be set. And I think it'll move you towards action on some of these other concepts that you might need to pick some things up because
Yeah,
they're just awesome. And
yeah. Well, thank you.
Quinn, thank you very much for sharing your passion with us today and like inspiring us to do it. Everyone else, thank you for buzzing into the Hive today. Together, we are building something special, something real, and that is a community of dedicated educators. We are committed to bringing the best to our school year. Remember to make sure to be mindful, to be awesome, and to be in motion. Apply these ideas like Quinn just sort of said. Keep up the tweets. Use the hashtag Hive Summit and Hive Sketch if you can. Check out the Kiva Fund, as that is so important to me that we kind of we're gathering here in the Hive. We're improving. We're getting better. I think it would be really a powerful message to say when teachers come together. Goes without saying that we're going to make the world a better place. And if you could, if you have the means, if you could kind of donate even a few bucks to that, it would make such a difference. Thank you all for what you guys do each and every day. I appreciate it. Have a great day.